Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fringe Coverage, the podcast bringing you the stories, swings, and stars of the LPGA Tour. Whether you're new to women's golf or a longtime fan, hopefully this helps you find the fun background stories that help you develop your own rooting interest in women's professional golf. On today's episode, we do our first player deep dive, and our first subject is none other than the incomparable Charley Hull. Now, we're recording this during the third round of the AIG Women's Open. And I knew from the jump that my first episode was going to be about Charley, and you'll hear more about why in just a little bit. But sure enough, I turned on my TV early this morning for some coffee golf, and there's Charley going out hot, shooting a 6 under 66 on Saturday to get into contention in this year's final major. So first off, Charley, thank you for validating my choice to debut you as the first player deep dive of Fringe Coverage. So why Charley? Without question, she has to be one of the most authentic, interesting, fascinating, and wildly entertaining athletes to follow in all of professional sports. Oh, and by the way, she absolutely rips the ball. On these player deep dives, we're going to go through kind of some background. We're going to figure out who she is, how's her game, why is she famous, some notes and quotes, and then some fringe stuff. But let's start with what's her name, how's her game, and why the fame. So Charley Hull's 29 years old. She's an English golf star, born and raised in Kettering, Northamptonshire. She started playing against adults and winning, by the way, at age 9. Yeah, you heard me right, age 9. She officially turned pro when she was 17 years old and was immediately the Ladies European Tour Rookie of the Year in 2013, and then joined the LPGA Tour when she was 19 years old, and that was in 2015. So she's been on tour for a long time, and before she was even an adult. How's her game? Here's what you need to know about Charley Hull. Currently, she ranks 20th in the Rolex rankings and 45th in this year's race to the CMA. She ranks 9th in overall strokes gained. She has a very complete golf game, but her strength is off the tee and ball striking, gaining over a shot tee to green compared to all of her competitors. Charley loves pulling driver, and she has an absolute just devastatingly fast, wicked golf swing, and it's very famous in the golf world because of the recoil she has. So after she puts a full swing on the ball, she has this crazy recoil and kind of holds it tight to her shoulders in her follow through, and also is famous for some of her for her club twirls. So she's definitely an on-course performer in more ways than one. She's super aggressive in her style of play, which as a fan is super entertaining to watch. You're not going to find Charley being really conservative on every hole. She really likes to get after it and is a very creative shot maker on the course. In terms of her overall career, Charley has 2 career LPGA wins, which honestly for me was less than I expected. She came out hot when I mentioned she joined the LPGA in 2015. She won the CME Tour Championship a year later in 2016, and that was one of her solo 2 wins on the LPGA. Now, she does have 4 wins on the Ladies European Tour as well. Official career earnings of just shy of $10 million as of recording. I have a feeling that number is going to go up significantly this week with her current performance at the AIG Women's Open. In majors, right now she's still looking for that first major. No wins on the card, 9 top 10 finishes, including 3 runner-ups. So Charley has been competitive in these majors, but has yet to be able to seal the deal. So again, as someone who I find myself gravitating towards just watching, if she's on TV, I sit down and watch. I really want to see her take that next step. Charley's also competed in 2 Olympics and has become a Solheim Cup stalwart. Again, for those of you unfamiliar, the Solheim Cup is the women's version of the Ryder Cup, like in the men's game. Charley has played in 7 Solheim Cups. Remember, the Solheim Cup is every other year. She has an incredible record of 15, 9, and 3. She holds the record for being the youngest member ever of the European Tour, her first one being when she was just over 17 years old. And oddly enough, Charley actually hates partner play. So again, the Solheim Cup is divided up into 4-ball and foursomes matches, as well as a singles match on the final day. And Charley lives for the singles matches, but is very open about how she does not like partner play. She has, despite that, done very well, but very, very interesting that she is not a big fan of partner play, and just makes her that much more fascinating when the Solheim Cup comes around. So I've already shared a little bit for why she's famous in terms of how she rips the ball, but really, I think what makes her so appealing to me is how engaging she is off the course. She is by far the best social media follow I have, whether it's her sense of fashion, very active nightlife lifestyle, always with her friends, very outspoken of how much she likes being a homebody as well. She's sponsored by Malbon, again, the same clothing apparel company that sponsors Jason Day, who has some kind of cutting edge new modern styles that are always a little bit controversial, but Charley's known as one of the best dressers on tour, super stylish. And as I mentioned, she's a very aggressive golfer, but she loves golf. And while that seems like an obvious statement for someone who's a professional golfer, she loves to just beat balls on the range. She just loves to hit balls, loves to play golf. In her off time, she loves to play golf with her friends. You'll hear a lot of tour professionals on the men's and women's side say, hey, when I'm out on the golf course, the last thing I want to do is go play casual golf with my friends. I want to either be, you'll hear a lot of them say, I just want to be horizontal. I just want to spend time with my kids. I just want to do something that's not golf. But Charley kind of lives, eats, sleeps, breathes golf, and is truly obsessed with the sport. And I think probably one of the reasons she's most famous right now on tour is she speaks her mind. And whether there's a controversial rule, whether there's something she disagrees with, Charley's not one to mince words and is very direct. And we'll get into some of that now with some of the notes and quotes that we have from Charley. So my all-time favorite highlight of Charley, it certainly isn't unique to me, in the 2023 U.S. Open, which was hosted at Pebble Beach. In the final round, going into the 18th hole, Charley was in contention and hit her tee shot behind the famous tree right in the middle of the fairway at Pebble. And she needed to get to the green in two to have a chance and put some pressure on the leader. And she and her caddy were going back and forth about what shot to hit and whether she should lay up. And ultimately, the mics on course caught her saying to her caddy, and I quote, "Shy kids don't get sweets," which was her way of saying, like, hey, I got to go for this. The quote itself went viral, but it very much speaks to the way Charley plays and the reason why a lot of people find themselves rooting for her. A little bit of that tin cup mentality for those of you 90s golf movies obsessed people like me. She very much a tin cup moment of, hey, I'm going to go for it. And she put an epic swing on it and almost made it really interesting. Kind of similar to that, she subsequently has become famous for all sorts of things, including smoking a cigarette on the golf course. Again, not something you see for someone who is certainly someone who is as fitness obsessed as Charley. If you look up ripping darts on Google, you will very quickly see Charley Hull in the middle of a fairway, walking off a tee box, smoking a cigarette, which caused a bunch of outrage in what I can only describe as somewhat of a stuffy golf community. But she just, no apology. She said, yeah, I have a cigarette every now and then. But it kind of made the rounds in the golf and sports ecosystem. And then she very publicly made a bet with someone on her own social media saying, I'll bet you $10,000 that I'll quit smoking, and made it a very much a public thing. Everything about Charley is just very, very right in front of you. And I really appreciate that in a sport like golf that's just so stuffy, and the answers can so quickly become, oh, I'm just going to give it 100%. I'm going to take it one hole at a time. I'm just trying to hit fairways and greens and take the opportunities as they come, which, look, so much of that is truth, and there's so much consistency in golf, but it's nice to have some personalities, especially when it comes to interviews. Because again, the whole reason for this podcast is to give you some rooting interest. And I think most golfers kind of become one homogenized group of boring people. And Charley Hull really bucks that trend, in my opinion. So I really like what Charley brings to the game, and certainly how she approaches her media interviews, which a couple years ago, Charley announced that she had been diagnosed with ADHD, and she openly shares how she gets bored on the course. And you can even see it just in the way she does her pressers and her interviews. She's very impatient. And if someone's asking her a long-winded question, you'll never unsee this now, but Charley will cut people off left and right and just answer the question before they've even finished, because she is just so ready to get to the next thing. So she is just a very, very entertaining quote, and I'll share a couple with you. She gets asked a lot about the style she wears with Malbon as her sponsor, and she uses it as an opportunity to kind of address the state of golf. And this quote, she says, "I think they," being Malbon, "I think they are very clever with the way they brand their stuff. Golf needed a bit of the kick in the butt." And I just love that she's very open about that. She doesn't use a yardage book. She claims that often. She lets her caddy do all the work. She says, "Hey, I've got a caddy for a reason. I never look at a yardage book. We get up to the ball. I ask for, front of the green, pin, back of the green, wind direction." And then she just gets up and hits it. And again, there's a lot of people that do it different ways, and there's no right way to do it, but it just kind of adds to the Charley Hull personality of, hey, I just get up there and I love playing golf and I'm going to hit the shot. And then Charley's also really known for how obsessed she gets in the gym, how much she loves working out, but she also really doesn't like golf training. She likes to work out, and recently she was asked about how she likes to golf train, and she says, quote, "I don't train for golf. I have zero interest in training for golf. I think golf training is a load of rubbish. I just train because it's good for my mental health and it's good for me. And I want to be an athlete. I just don't want to be a golfer." So again, you just start to see that Charley isn't the typical golfer. She's cut from a different cloth. She likes to work out. She is definitely an athlete first, and she has a very athletic move when she goes after the golf ball, and you'll see that in that swing that I talked about earlier. A couple other notes from the Fringe that I thought would be interesting for all of you. Charley's very outspoken about the horrendous pace of play on the LPGA Tour. It's come under fire here, this topic, over the last, really, it's been a problem for a while, but in the last, I'd say 6 to 12 months, it's got a lot of attention of how long these rounds are taking the women. And there are some very obvious culprits. And then there are some people who honestly get penalized by who their playing partners are. And Charley, being who she is, does not mince words and tells everyone what she thinks about pace of play, how she thinks there should be penalties for those that are getting out of position. And again, in a golf world where oftentimes people keep their opinions to themselves, Charley makes sure everyone knows what it is she's thinking. She also has some very interesting athletic goals that don't relate to golf. When someone asked her earlier this year what her goals were for the year, the question was asked very much in the context of golf, but she decided to answer and said, "Hey, I'm trying to get my 5K race time under sub 20 minutes." And she was currently at 26 minutes at the time. And for those of you that have any familiarity with running, shaving 6 minutes off of a 5K time when you're starting at 26 minutes is not something that happens overnight. But a professional golfer who you would think is spending all their time on refining their chipping techniques, flighting the ball, trying to get chase distance and get extra yardage off the tee, what she's focused on is getting her 5K times down. And again, it just goes back to her wanting to be an athlete, and it helps her with not only her general health, but certainly her mental health as well. She's best friends with Charley Hull, who's another player from England on the LPGA Tour. They've had a couple chances to team up at the Solheim Cup, which is always really fun. I always very much enjoy finding out who's friends on tour, because then when you start watching, you start to see how excited they get to be with one another. They have a very fun dynamic. And then the last piece about Charley is really more of a personal note. Charley is the inspiration for naming my own daughter Charley. Now, I do spell it differently, but my wife and I were having trouble figuring out what we wanted to name our firstborn. And one day I was watching golf, and sure enough, Charley was on screen, and immediately I threw the name out to my wife, and sure enough, our oldest is now named Charley. So again, you can see why Charley might have been an easy choice for me to be the opening deep dive episode of Fringe Coverage. So these are hot and heavy episodes. I want to go fast. It's not the deepest dive. I understand that everyone's coming at this with different levels of knowledge, but right now I just want to make sure people have information to help figure out who they want to root for, and whether it's Charley Hull or Charley Hull or some of the other golfers we're going to talk about over the next episodes. There are a few things that I saw this week outside of talking about Charley Hull that I thought I would share, most of which revolve around the AIG Women's Open. Again, we're recording this we're just wrapping up the third round of the AIG Women's Open. And at the start of this week, somehow, Lottie Woad was the betting favorite for the AIG Women's Open. Need I remind you, 3 weeks ago, Lottie Woad was still an amateur golfer. She's been on a tear. She had won a tournament as an amateur. She almost stole a major as an amateur. And then in her first official tournament as a professional, she won, and then goes straight into this event. Now, she has great experience on links golf, and there's reason for that. But the absurdity of having an amateur golfer go into her second tournament as a professional, which just happens to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest major of the year, as the betting favorite is unbelievable. So obviously we're in the third round now. She stumbled out of the gates a little bit, but she's made the cut. She's a couple under par right now. Certainly going to have to make a charge here on the final holes on Saturday and again on Sunday to really get into contention. But you can tell this is really good for golf when there's that much, not only just enthusiasm about a golf, but betting enthusiasm. That means there's some real meat on that bone and some real great rooting interest in Lottie. So can't wait to continue to watch her trajectory. Second thing I saw this week, again, from the AIG Women's Open, that was just so telling of the LPGA Tour. About 3/4 of the way through round one, I just pulled up my phone to look at the leaderboard while I was at work. And the top 5 players on the leaderboard were from Japan, and 6 of the top 9 were Japanese. Japan's having their moment, and I think they might even be happening a year or two earlier than they expected some of these, especially the young ones, to make such an impact. But pretty impressive start for the Japanese contingent, and I'm really curious to see how they progress. I will flag Okayama, who was the first, I think, tied for the first round lead. She went on to miss the cut. She shot 67-81 and missed the cut by a couple shots. I mean, sheesh. That's tough to go from leading a women's major to not even getting to play the weekend. I don't have the stats in front of me of how infrequent that happens, but that has to be a pretty short list. So tough day 2 for Okayama, and hopefully she can shake that off. But man, it was a pretty impressive Japanese leaderboard on day 1. And then finally, the last piece from the AIG Women's Open, just kind of a fun story. Yanni Sang. So Yanni Sang is 36 years old. She's a 2-time Open champion from Taiwan, and has since kind of gone into a really rough stretch of golf. This weekend, or this Friday, she made the cut, and it was her first made cut in a major since 2017. Yeah, you heard that right. It's been 8 years since she's even made a cut in any of the 5 majors. She's currently ranked 1,055th in the Rolex rankings. This is a woman who has 15 career wins, $10 million in career earnings, and again, a 2-time major champion that was really lost in the wilderness for a long time, and they were able to the LPGA was able to catch up with her after Friday's round and interview her. And I'm going to put the interview in the show notes. She did a killer interview just saying how wonderful it was to be back and playing on a weekend and the journey she's been through. Wild thing about Yanni, she's right-handed, but she putts left-handed. She was putting so horribly a year or two ago that she decided to try something different and now putts left-handed. Not many left-handers at all on the LPGA Tour, and for there to be a righty who putts lefty, even that much more unique. But you can tell how much in the depth she has been to have started putting left-handed. So again, I'm going to put the interview link in the show notes. She just was super, super appreciative of being where she was, and really a fun story. And hopefully she does something fun on the weekend, something to root for. So with that is our first official player deep dive on Charley Hull and some other news and notes. Hopefully you enjoy this format. We're going to try to replicate this, but would love all of your feedback on what we can do differently. I understand it's a one-man podcast and it's probably dull after a while, listen to the same voice. Going to try to get some creative ways to address that. But in the meantime, what do you want to learn more about these golfers? Do you want to hear more about their golf? Do you want to hear about them more off the course? This is episode 2 of a podcast of who knows how long it goes. So would love feedback. Hopefully you all enjoy it. And with that, I'm looking forward to next time for our next player deep dive. Enjoy the final round of the AIG Women's Open, and see you next time.